Hello and welcome. Today we will look at the seventh commandment, thou shalt not steal. We are following that big book, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. Let's dive in. Looked at from a broader perspective, the seventh commandment concerns the proper distribution of material things. And for this, which is an aspect of justice, a very important principle is called the universal destination of goods. We will also look at another principle which is not on the same level, but is very important, which is called the private ownership of goods. In the beginning, God entrusted the earth and its resources to the common stewardship of mankind to take care of them, master them by his labor, and enjoy their fruits. The goods of creation then are destined for the entire human race, for all men and women. This being so, the ownership of property is legitimate for guaranteeing the freedom and dignity of persons and for helping each of them to meet their basic needs and the needs of those in his or her charge. I need to count on a stable means. If I want to raise a family, for example, I need to count on a house, or I need to be able to have other material things such as my household, my furniture. I need to be able to count on a number of things, being able to possibility to save, and knowing that what I save I can count on that being available later on. So private property then is very, very important for guaranteeing the freedom and dignity of persons, as we said. In his use of things, man should regard the goods he legitimately owns not merely as exclusive to himself, but common to others as well, not in a sense that violates private property, but in the sense that they can benefit others as well as himself. In other words, there remains the duty of solidarity, and also we must continue to keep in mind the principle of the universal destination of goods. The ownership of any property makes its holder then a kind of a steward of providence, with the task of making it fruitful and communicating its benefits to others. And this we find in the Catechism, point 2404. Let's talk a bit about political authority. Political authority has the right and duty to regulate the legitimate exercise of the right to ownership for the sake of the common good. In other words, how this principle of universal destination is exercised should be laid out clearly in law. And in establishing these laws, the political authority is the one who has this duty and also the right to accomplish. The dominion granted by the Creator over the mineral, vegetable, and animal resources of the universe cannot be separated from respect for moral obligations, including those toward generations to come. So this is an extension of what we call the universal destination of goods. The goods creation, man did not give himself creation, it comes from God. And God put man as not just to have dominion in the sense that he can use creation to just obey his whims, but creation has its own nature and dynamic, and then man can intervene in creation with science, but respecting always the natural order that was ordained by God. So then there needs to be respect for nature. Animals are entrusted to man's stewardship, yes, but he must show them kindness. He must recognize them as gifts. They may be used to serve the just satisfaction of man's need, but always with a sense of, well, reverence, a sense of respect, and also that exercised with right reason. The principles, criteria, and the body of experience that emerges when we speak about the seventh commandment in a broader perspective forms what we call the social doctrine of the church. There is a big book written called The Social Teachings of the Church, which I recommend that you look at, because here we are going to bring everything together in just one slide. The church makes a judgment about economic and social matters when the dignity of the person or the salvation of souls requires it. She is our mother. She is concerned with the temporal common good of men, because it is ordained to the building up of the eternal kingdom of God. It's a very important aspiration of all men then should be, social justice. Society ensures social justice when it provides the conditions that allow associations or individuals to obtain what is their due according to their nature and their vocation. So there is social justice when there is commutative justice, legal justice, and distributive justice comes together. Then we find that there is a social whole that is altogether just, that the conditions are given that allow associations or individuals to obtain what is their due according to their nature and their vocation. Socialization also prevents dangers. There is original sin and the fact that man is limited in what he can, in all that he can know and the information that he has at any given time. Excessive intervention by the state can threaten personal freedom and initiative. The teaching of the church has elaborated the principle of subsidiarity, a very important principle, according to which, and here's the definition, a community of a higher order should not interfere in the internal life of a community of a lower order, depriving the latter of its functions, but rather it should support it in case of need and help to coordinate its activity with the activities of the rest of society, always with a view to the common good. Okay, so let's read that again. Principle of subsidiarity. A community of a higher order should not intervene in the internal life of a community of a lower order, depriving the latter of its functions, but rather should support it in case of need and help to coordinate its activity with the activities of the rest of society, always with a view to the common good. An example, a school. Parents have the right to come together to form a school that would educate and form their children in a way that is in accord with their aspirations and their traditions and their values. So it would be wrong for the state to say, there should not be any private initiative in education because that creates inequalities or prejudices or things like that. No, that is not true at all. They have a right, and there is no reason to think that because persons would want to pass on certain values to their children, that they are doing so with the view of separating them in becoming a clique. No, they do it because they afterwards would like these values that they pass on to penetrate and to reach out to all of society. The value of work, a very important point. The primordial value of labor or work stems from man himself, its author and beneficiary. Life is a fundamental value, as we considered in an earlier lesson. But we cannot think about life without considering that to safeguard life, that man has to work. Man is not like animals who can just go and take what they want. That its activity of providing for everyone needs to be coordinated, and so then we have work, and that the means of production need to be coordinated. So then work has a primordial value because it's what sustains, is directly related to the value of life. By means of his labor, man participates in the work of creation. He fulfills himself as a human being. Work becomes a place where he can also learn and practice the many virtues. Work united to Christ can be redemptive because life is a struggle, and that struggle is something that can be offered as a redemptive sacrifice to God. There's the issue of access to employment then, because work is such an important value, not just only because of the means of production, but because of how internally man improves himself as a human being through work. Access to employment should always be something of a very high concern for the state and for persons in authority. Access to employment and to professions must be open to all without unjust discrimination. Men and women, healthy and disabled, natives and immigrants. For its part, society should, according to circumstances, help citizens find work and employment. Access to employment and to professions must be open to all without, as we said, unjust discrimination. Now, society has to have means and organization in such a way so that persons will be able to be duly registered and things like that, but everyone should be encouraged to work in some way because that's part of the dignity of the human person. Workers have a right to form associations for the purpose of defending the vital interests of those employed in the various professions. So then there can be societies of lawyers, doctors, and this is how the profession itself can maintain a certain standard so it can better serve the common good. At times there are systemic inequalities and corruption in a society, and this is something that we need to always fight against, try to avoid and correct. Dishonest or illegal behavior, especially by powerful people such as government officials or police officers, undermine social justice and is gravely immoral. It often entails a scandal of inducement to wrong by improper or unlawful means, such as bribery. At times it can lead to the formulation of unjust laws, which creates great systemic inequalities, we can say, in society, and disrupts the system of justice in a society. On the international level, inequality of resources and economic capability is such that it creates a real gap between nations. Rich nations then have a grave moral responsibility towards those which are unable to ensure the means of their development by themselves or have been prevented from doing so by tragic historical events. The Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church, we referred to that book earlier on, recognizes that political corruption is one of the causes that greatly contributes to underdevelopment and poverty, especially in developing countries. This is particularly true of countries that are in debt, which are not repayable in part due to corruption, poor administration of public finances, or improper utilization of loans already received. In these situations, the people who suffer the worst brunt of political corruption are the poor and the powerless. It is not the role of pastors of the church to intervene directly in the political structuring and organization of social life. This task is part of the vocation of the lay faithful acting on their own initiative with their fellow citizens and striving to form themselves in a very deep way, a profound way, in the social teachings of the church, and also in the development and also developing the proper criteria and applying these criteria in their circumstances. Each of us, every person can do something to establish and to help bring about a more just order in one's country and in the whole world. Because of man's inherent limitations, because of his nature, and in addition, there's brokenness that comes through original sin, mercy is needed as a complement, or almost a part, you can almost say, of justice if we are to attain the common good. Mercy then is a kind of a virtue, part of justice almost, which influences our will to have compassion for and, if possible, to alleviate another's misfortune. Giving alms, for example, to the poor is part of Christian living. It's a witness to fraternal charity. It is also a work of justice that is pleasing to God, remembering what we spoke about, that principle of solidarity. John Paul II, he writes, "How can we not recognize Lazarus, the hungry beggar, in the parable?" Referring to the parable of the Lazarus, who is the beggar at the gate of the rich man who was there every day and he was never noticed. How can we not, he says, recognize Lazarus, the hungry beggar, in the parable, in the multitude of human beings without bread, a roof, or a place to stay? How can we fail to hear Jesus, "As you did it not to the least of these, you did it not to me"? The church has recommended, as part of Christian life, the practice of the 7 corporal and spiritual works of mercy. The 7 corporal works of mercy are: feed the hungry, so providing food and means for living for those in need; giving drink to the thirsty; clothing the naked; sheltering the homeless; visiting the sick; visiting the imprisoned; and burying the dead. Then there are the spiritual works of mercy, and these are to instruct the ignorant, to counsel the doubtful, to admonish sinners, to bear wrongs patiently, to forgive offenses willingly, to comfort the afflicted, to pray for the living and the dead. Case study: fighting corruption. I am going to show you guys a short video, a TED talk given by an expert on corruption and criminology. His name is Nikos Passas. I'll have to do it, filming it on my screen. So let's see how this comes out. Okay, I'm gonna turn the camera around now. Here we go. And that's my screen in front there. And we're going to play it, the video.
In a badly maintained car. A very good rule, traffic rule, says you can't do that. It's bad for safety, it's bad for the car. But consider this. These people are coming from the village where there are no jobs, no public transportation, no means to buy another way of getting from home to work and bring some food to the table. Not giving them a ticket, not impounding the car, is not because the traffic warden is on the take. It is because he understands, he sympathizes. In the same way, you can't fight corruption on an empty stomach. You can't fight corruption when salaries are below real living standards and people are looking left and right for solutions. You need to prioritize, you need to find what you do first, what you do second, and you need to start fixing the economy at the same time. In a badly maintained car.
Do you agree that you can't fight corruption on an empty stomach? What do you think are the main causes of corruption? What can we do to fight corruption? Well, think about these questions, discuss them with a friend or over coffee, and I'll see you next time.